Okay, that was a short countdown, but we're here. No worries. A countdown got terminated quickly. Welcome to the International People and Culture Week 2026. This has been an exciting week. We have had some great conversations. So if you're joining us live, wherever you're joining us from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Even if you're not joining us from Africa, wherever you are, say hello on LinkedIn. Tell us what you do, where you're from, and what the people and culture imperative means to you. My name is Jonathan. I'm the manager at the PCI that's producing the International People and Culture Week. So if you're not a member yet at the PCI, we have 600 members who have joined us over the last 2 years from different walks of life who are leaders in the people, culture, coaching, conflict resolution space. But this is an open pool. It's basically for anyone. It's a hub for anyone who's making workplaces better wherever they are. So come to join us. It's absolutely free. All you got to do is go to peopleprofessionals.org and you'll get more information there. If you get lost, drop us an email at info@peopleprofessionals.org and I can help you with some more details. A quick shout out to our sponsors for today, the TCM Group that's based in the UK and that's been revolutionizing the space for conflict resolution and coaching and leadership and people and culture. So big shout out to the TCM Group that's sponsoring the International People and Culture Week 2026. Now, I also got to draw your attention to the People Leader magazine. So it's once again revolutionizing the people and culture space, and it's free for this year. So do check it out at thepeopleleader.com, and you can get your latest edition that talks about the current trends in the people and culture and leadership space. And we've been featuring some fantastic guests there, and hopefully we'll feature some of our guests today on this panel as well. But we can't wait to dive into this conversation. Today's focus is Africa. Obviously, we cannot represent the whole of Africa today on this panel, but we hope to do that in the next year and get more representation in. But we've got some fantastic guests joining us from Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa today, and we really can't wait to get into those conversations. Now, I'm really excited about this panel because it's a very diverse panel. We've got chief people officers, lawyers, educationists, and those who have worked in the public sector space, so all contributing to making workplaces better in Africa. So once again, wherever you're joining us from, use the chat box, say hi to our guests, and if you have any questions for them during the time of this conversation, we'll be more than happy to respond to them. I want to start off by saying hello to Kate Deru, who's joining us from Kenya today. She's the Director of People and Culture at Nightwise Human Capital Limited. Kate, of course, has an expertise in recruitment, learning and development, organizational change, organizational culture, employee well-being, engagement surveys. Very interesting fact there. We'll try and come to that today. And of course, before this, she has held a very interesting role of the Chief Happiness Officer at Medlux International Hospital. So let's try and get into that as well. Kate, welcome to the International People and Culture Week 2026. I want to stay in... Thank you, Kate. I want to stay in Kenya, but we want to say hello to Mark Boy Chiuli, who's of course joining us today on the panel. Mark is the founder of People Age Consulting and of course has an expertise in transforming HR in Africa, organizational culture, competency development, and HR analytics for CEOs and HR leaders. Now, Mark, of course, has a varied experience working as an HR leader in Africa, holding a lot of leadership roles in the Kenya Revenue Authority, the Kenya Wine Agencies Limited, the Retirement Benefits Authority, the Kenya Tourism Board, and of course still consults with the Federation of Kenya Employers. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us on this panel once again.
Thank you.
Awesome. I want to fly into Nigeria because that's where Dr. Nancy Zom is joining us from. Dr. Nancy is, of course, an employment lawyer and the founder of Zinago Institute of Policy and Socio-Legal Research and the principal partner, of course, at Zinago Law Practice. Of course, Dr. Nancy holds expertise in workplace governance, labor protection, and dispute resolution. That's the one thing that always gets David and me excited about on this panel. Dr. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us on this panel. All right, we're going to fix that little StreamYard gremlin soon, but we're going to fly down south to South Africa. And that's because we got Dr. Jerry joining us from South Africa. Dr. Jerry Gule, of course, is a seasoned executive coach. And Dr. Jerry, of course, is a director with over 30 years of experience in HR, transformation, and marketing. and holds a doctorate of education from Harvard, and formerly served as a lecturer at the University of Eswatini, if I got that right. Of course, Dr. Jerry is also the former CEO of the IPM South Africa and has significantly shaped the modern HR practices and organizational leadership. Now, this is a star-studded panel, a blockbuster panel here we have representing Africa on the Regional Caucus. And so we need a really good anchor to do that. And steps in David Little, of course, the CEO and founder of the TCM Group, the president of the PCI, the author of Transformational Culture, Managing Conflict, and now the latest book on people and culture. David is also, of course, the editor of The People Leader and the creator of the Resolution Framework. And he is going to be anchoring this conversation today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to David. I can't wait for this exciting conversation.
Wow. Jonathan, thank you so much. What an exciting panel. I'm so thrilled to be here today hosting this conversation, looking at best practice in the areas of people, culture, leadership, learning, and all things about creating that powerful space where we can thrive, where we can flourish, where our teams excel, and where our organizations can deliver incredible success. And what better place to have that conversation and focusing on the incredible work across Africa today. And as you said, we've got some wonderful guests. So it's great to be here. Welcome to International People and Culture Week. As Jonathan said, please do share your thoughts in the comments. The idea behind these, I guess, is a big conversation. And if you listen to any of the sessions we've run so far, they really are big conversations, and we dig into some really exciting areas. They're really practical as well. That's what I love about these conversations, Jonathan. They're very practical. How do we deliver the changes? How do we bring this stuff to life in our own organization? So if you're listening to us on LinkedIn or on YouTube, what are you doing right now to deliver the people and culture imperative in your organization? What practical steps can you take to be able to make this work? Now, I'm conscious, Nancy, I was going to start with you for the instructions, but I just want to make sure, Jonathan, we could do a little sound check with Nancy before I do that, if that's okay. Actually, Nancy, let me just double check. Can you hear me and can we hear you? Nancy, I can't hear you. So we're going to just pause that. We're going to get that fixed in the background, Nancy. But what I'm going to do, if that's okay, Kate, I'm going to come to yourself and say a very warm welcome to the People and Culture, International People and Culture Week panel. Yeah, we've just got a few problems with the sound there, Nancy. What we'll do is we'll get that fixed. And I'm going to come to yourself, Kate, if I can. And Kate, welcome. How are you? And this is not, as we said, this is not your first appearance on International People and Culture Week.
It's not indeed. Hi, David. Hi, everyone. And thank you so much for having me again on this very important conversation about people, culture. And the theme this year is exciting because I can't wait to get into the discussions around how imperative it is to get it right, get the culture right in the world that we exist in, David. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I know we've spoken before. You have a real passion for people-centered approaches to workplaces and creating strong cultures for people to thrive. Where does that passion come from, Kate? What keeps that, and what keeps the fire burning for you in terms of all things people and culture-oriented work?
Well, I get bored very fast. So if I have to do the same thing over and over again, that would be so boring. Like accounting is so boring, but just because of how diverse people are in their thinking. And if you think about what's happening in a global perspective and what's shifting that in the workplace, that's really exciting. I've never had a same day in the office, really. And that's exciting for me. And I have to keep myself on my toes to make sure that we're still getting it right.
I love that. And I love the fact that working in the areas of people and culture is exciting. It's thrilling and it's constantly changing and agile, but it also requires a new mindset in the way that we think about human resources, around leadership, around management, because it's constantly adapting and flexing. Okay, but it sounds like that's the space that you thrive in. And it also sounds like that's a space that helps others to thrive too. Kate, I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Nancy, let's just do a quick sound check. How are we doing? Yeah, we are just struggling there, Nancy. What might be helpful if you want to come out and come back in again, and then we'll. I'm so excited to welcome you to the session and find out more about you, Nancy. We're going to get this sound working in just a second. But this is one of the things about running global events and sessions such as this. It's in real time. This is really happening. This is about driving real change. So thanks so much, Mark. Can I come to you? Welcome, Mark. How are you?
Very well, David. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I would say that culture has been one of my babies, if you like, and it's a pet subject for me. Pet, why? Because ever since I moved into the consulting space, I've been supporting organizations to get it right. It's a big challenge. I know along the conversation, as we dive deeper, we are going to learn that it's well said, but now in practice, and how do organizations adapt the culture and actually live it is another challenge altogether. So it's exciting to be here, and I'm ready to learn from the other members of the panel. But it's a subject I really like in terms of leadership and culture, because the two are building blocks in gaining the right culture for an organization. If the leadership fails, the culture cannot be implemented. If the strategy is not tied to the culture, then things go the other way, they go south. So I'm really, really excited to be here and to learn from the panelists and actually share my experiences as a consultant. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I'm really excited to hear more about that. We've had some conversations at the People and Culture Institute about the alignment of strategy, the people plan, the people strategy, and the alignment to the corporate strategy, and the role that people and culture function, the HR function, I guess, in old money, and the leadership function in creating that strategic alignment. When it works, Mark, when you see these great cultures really coming to life and working well, what are the benefits from what you've seen? What are the benefits of getting culture right? What's the impact?
I would say that once those three are aligned, like you rightly mentioned, then an organization will definitely achieve whatever strategy they set up to achieve.
Yeah.
Because everybody is aligned in terms of behavior, in terms of how we do things around here. So that one definitely then, if for instance, you're aiming to increase your productivity, you definitely will achieve it because there's alignment between those three components.
Yeah. So you're delivering that strategic value, strategic objectives, driving productivity in the organization. And the beauty of all of that, Mark, is we're bringing people with us.
Sure thing. You have everybody on board.
Yeah, I love that. What a great way of thinking about culture. Mark, thank you. Kate, very warm welcome. Nancy, welcome back.
Hello, yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear. It's so fantastic to have you here today, Nancy, loud and clear. So, Nancy, tell us a little bit about yourself and your sort of journey into the area of people and culture and leadership.
Okay, I'm actually an employment lawyer here. One of the things that fascinates me is how people are treated, how organizations manage disputes. And you could see that most of this dispute, if it's managed properly, it's actually going to reduce the number of court cases. You all could see that most of these disputes are not something that needs to even escalate to be where it is. What really causes dispute? You could see that people are not treated fairly. People are discriminated. Employees are not given the option to hear their voices. Most times management actually, this is not important. So these are the reason why I actually love what I'm doing now, because I get to write policies where you advise organization, this is how to do things. Everybody should be treated equally. There should be constant training.
No, so we'll just give that a moment to reset there, see if that bandwidth picks up. So just a little bit of a pause there. So I was really excited to hear that, because I think one of the elements I'm excited to think about is the role of sort of risk and compliance management within the organization. And Nancy, we're going to come back to you. You've just frozen a bit, Nancy. So just while that's resetting and we're getting that bandwidth, Jerry, I'm going to come over to you, if I may, and say a very warm welcome to today's International People and Culture Week panel. Jerry, how are you?
Great, David.
Fantastic.
Excited to be here. Yes, it's my first one. I hear that Kate has been here, has been around, is the veteran.
A well-trodden path for Kate.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, welcome. It's great to find out a little bit more about you and your journey. And just that's just to say welcome back. And it just froze a little bit there, Nancy. So we're going to come back in a second and just pick up that conversation. But Jerry, just back over to you now.
Okay.
Jerry, just back to you. Yeah, do you want to carry on? Now we can hear you loud and clear, Nancy. Do you want to carry on then? Because you froze a little bit.
Yeah, I just said, like I said, why I'm actually doing this is, as a lawyer, we make people understand that you can actually avoid a whole lot of things, how people are being treated, the union, and because I've actually done courses on HR, I could find out that the only thing maybe what lawyers know is when there's disputes are here, let's go to court. But
yes,
you have to understand that, from my own perspective, is like, you don't need to go to court every time. How can this dispute happen? Because if you keep going to court, you keep going to court. How do you make sure that this dispute doesn't even happen? Making the organization understand that the more you have court cases, your organization, the reputational damage is going down. So make them understand that this is a fair way. When issues come, everybody has to bend. Thank you.
And I can't tell you how liberating it is to hear what you just said for me, and I'm for sure for many people who are in sort of people leadership roles. And I hope it's not too crass a thing to say, but sometimes I think we look at formal processes and litigation and we recognize that many law firms' profit and loss accounts are built on litigation. And we understand litigation plays an important part in justice, and we also understand it plays an important part in how our legal firms work. I think you're suggesting, and if I'm getting this right, that litigation, of course, plays a part, but actually helping to create strong cultures where there's compliance, but there's also compassion and a people-centered approach. That's better for business. It's better for the reputation. And you're describing some of the outputs, which I think might be surprising to hear coming from an employment lawyer. Am I being too crass? Am I oversimplifying this, or are you a radical dissenter in the world of legal services?
Yeah. Because a regular litigation lawyer would not even expect you to say this, because if you're telling them not to go to court, how do we feed?
Yeah.
Who pays our bills? But me being in the middle and as an employment relations specialist, I'm actually in the middle telling the employer that this dispute, you need to find a way, you need to get a clearer policy. You need to find a way to make sure that this dispute, because somebody must say the truth. You can't use because you want food in your mouth and you don't say the truth. You have to say the truth. That's my position, that this particular dispute can actually be resolved internally without even letting it escalate. Because when there's a clearer policy, everyone is happy. The organization is happy, the employees is happy. But like I said, a regular litigation lawyer would not go by this way, because you know how it is. I want to go to court. Come, let's go to court. And my bill is so and so. Like, I'm going to give you my legal fee, pay my legal fee, and let's go to court. So it's a different mindset. My mindset is coming more like a policy mindset. So if I'm going to talk like a lawyer, it's actually going to be very, very different.
And I think it's so refreshing to hear what you're saying. And I think when we think about those policies through the people-centered lens as you're describing, rather than a kind of compliance and risk mitigation lens, those policies actually become part of the fabric of the culture of our organization. They drive the behaviors, they drive the way we connect, the way that we interact, the way that we kind of belong in our organizations. And if the policy is less adversarial or confrontational or litigation inspired, it's more about dialogue and resolution, then that too impacts on the behaviors that then has a direct impact on the culture of our organization. We cannot overstate the importance of that. I love that, Nancy. I am excited to have the conversation with you. I know we're going to dig more into this more. Nancy, a very very warm welcome to the session. So Jerry, we're going to come back to you again. Jerry, good to have you here today. I know it's your first session. We are pleased to have you here. Jerry, tell us a little bit about your work and your journey into the areas of people and culture and leadership and coaching as well. I think Jonathan mentioned we are big fans of coaching at the People and Culture Institute.
Thanks, David. I'm so excited also to hear what Nancy has to say around how we manage people relations in the workplace.
Yeah,
I was very naughty as a manager, general manager, human resources. I was naughty in the sense that, who causes the problems in the workplace is the line manager, right? And it's so common and easy for people to shift that over to HR. And my strategy was, I'm not going to take your case to the conciliation board. You're going to do it. You started the nonsense. You fix your own nonsense. I will support you. But you will have to appear there so that you can understand what goes on, where you have gone wrong, But I will support you. But one of the lessons, the way we can help our managers to really understand the impact of their words, the words they say to employees, how they behave, how they treat other people, is really to get to the trenches of what does it mean to manage these employee relations. And when we've messed up, HR is not going to clean up. We will clean up together because this is your team. These are your people, but I will support you. So in my work currently, I enjoy this topic of the people agenda, people and culture, simply because of this. My thing is, in the workplace, we come as adults looking for sustenance, something that will sustain us. Both management and employees, we're adults. No one is a child here. We are grown-ups. We know we should understand that we have responsibilities. But it's to understand that, yes, we'll be playing different roles, but ultimately, no one is a kid here. We're all mature. And that's why the tough conversation that Nancy is talking about can happen, but they must happen respectfully because there are guide rails, there are guidelines, there are policies, there are procedures, and we've got to do that. And my thing is also, it's really unfair not to have that tough conversation for someone who just is having a blind spot that they're not seeing what they're doing wrong. So it's actually very good to take your managers, your line managers, to the industrial court if you need to, as an HR, not to shield them so that they can learn. I enjoy this. I enjoy coaching. I'm a coach. I also am a chairman of a couple of boards. I'm a parent, I'm a grandfather. I'm also a counselor. So I enjoy that. My thing is, how can I live my life in a manner that respects Ubuntu? Because culture is about what kind of humanity, let's put it this way, what kind of a human being I am, and what kind of humanity do I want to see in the world. And leaders have to understand that their words, the words they speak, they create the culture, they create the policy. So I just get excited when I see people who are open, who are willing to learn, because I'm also willing to learn. As Mark said earlier, that I'm willing to learn. I'm looking forward to learn from my colleagues here and from all of us around the panel. But this work excites me because the way organizations can thrive is because their people are thriving. We cannot thrive as leaders, as organizations, if our people are just surviving. Thriving, and I've seen it work, it's because everybody in the organization has the vibe. I always say, are they walking like they have fire, air in their soul, the soles of their shoes? Because if that's what's happening, the workplace is going to be exciting, and it is possible. I've seen it happen. Thanks, Dave.
Wow, Jerry. Whoa, what a start. Listen, how fantastic. Kate, Mark, Nancy, Jerry, we've got fire on our souls. We are going to have an incredible conversation. I don't know, Jerry, what your thoughts are, but I've worked with managers and I see this culture in our organization of extensive inaction. We fail to have the conversation. We don't say what's on our mind. We don't give people the chance to feedback. We don't give that moment of feedback to help them deal with the blind spots, as you very, very vividly described them. And then we kind of go along, and then there's expensive overreaction. We haven't done anything, and then we end up with a big conflagration. It really becomes very difficult and complex, and then we have these rigid and bureaucratic processes and legal fees and court costs. And you described, I think, as I heard it, almost the conversation as an obligation of management. It's an obligation to sit down and give the feedback. And you talked about it being a tough conversation, but I heard it far, far deeper than a tough conversation. I heard it as a human connection, and that the obligation on the manager is to create that human connection, to give and receive the feedback, to provide the understanding, to share the insight. Could you say a little bit more about that? And I'm guessing this coaching might help to guide that conversation a bit, Jerry. Does that help inform those conversations that have to happen? They're not nice to have now. They become need to have critical conversations that we need to have.
You know, Dave, we read these things on graphics, infographics. Be the kind of leader that people would remember, treat people kindly. But we actually, It's just slogans. It's like values on a piece of paper. No one is actually taking that and saying, this is actually how we're going to live here. Let me give you an example. In one of the organizations that South Africa is an experiment, as you would all know. Everyone in the world knows what 30 years we are just young in treating each other as human beings, right?
Yeah.
Because of the system that we had before. So we're in a situation where we have to experiment. I went to a plant in a company that I just joined. And the conversation around just being human was not happening. And as I was doing my induction, I was collecting notes at this particular plant around the plant management. So everybody was giving me feedback because they knew my role was OD and employment equity, So everyone was telling me all the gory stories about this guy. No one was telling me something beautiful. No one said to me, this is a father, this is a husband, this is a human being. But everybody was looking at this guy, but I was taking my notes. And after it finished, I said, this picture is tough. Just turn it to yourself, put yourself in the shoes of that man, that manager. You have a team working for you. Everybody is saying all these negative things, but no one has had the courage to come to you and say, this is what, when we're at the coffee station, the water cooler, this is what we say about you. No one has said that because we're all afraid. And we treat this person like a pariah. So what I did, and I was lucky because I was new, Mark. So I was able to go to this person and say, I've been doing my induction. This is what, I had slides that I had prepared. This is what has been said about you. And let's look at this. And of course you ask, what I'm going to tell you is going to be tough. You may not like it, but it can't be that all this feedback is wrong, that all these things that people are saying are wrong. So what am I saying with that point is that the conversation needs to be had, because it's so unfair that you walk around thinking I'm a shining star and no one has actually told you, hey, the emperor is naked here. It's so important to say that. So when I said to this guy, my role as the OD manager is to change this picture. Let's see if we can change this. Some of the stuff is tough, but you and I, let's have an opportunity to change this.
Massive.
I'll end there for now, Dave.
And the beauty is, and again, this is, Kate, I'm going to come to yourself, because you've been working in the people, culture and change in the well-being space for such a long time. And I think what I'm hearing Jerry saying, I think something I very much subscribe to, Kat, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on this, is people can change and the leopard can change its spots, and we can adjust and course correct as we're receiving feedback in real time. And I wonder, Kate, from the lens of a sort of very senior strategic people leader and thinking about the work that you've done in that space, how have you maybe brought that people-centered lens into your work? And do you agree with the hypothesis that we've been hearing there, that people can change and evolve and develop when the conversations are quality conversations and really delivering that? Kate, over to you. What do you think?
Oh, yes, certainly, David. And I agree with Jerry 100%. And maybe in our African context, we have those conversations over a cup of tea or over beer, but bringing it more formal in the workplace, it's really important too, because the manager that Jerry could be referring to probably didn't know of the blind spots that they have. So how do you make them see the blind spots? And you as my manager, I experience you in a very different way than how me as a peer to you would experience you. So this can easily be solved with assessments and 360 feedback mechanisms, where you get feedback from all the people that you're touching point with. They tell you, you're a good manager, but I think you shout too much over here, or when you're giving your instructions, there's vagueness. You need that authentic feedback so that you take a step back and say, hey, it's actually true. Maybe I could send my emails in a better tone and not shouting in my capital letters than red text. So that kind of feedback, 360 feedback, it has been proven very helpful for leaders and managers as well. And also the next step after that is, now what do you need to stop doing and what do you need to start doing, so that now there is a correction from this, what we've identified as an issue. David.
I love that as well. And what that stop doing and start doing, it's starting to give agency and choice to people about how they want to behave. with a deep understanding of the consequences of the behavior if they go down a particular route, because we've now listened to the feedback. And it seems like a really important part of helping people shift their behavior is to give them choices. And I just wondered, Kate, as well, kind of thinking about your work in the area of happiness. And it feels to me that when we have the ability to make choices, I'm always inspired by Daniel Pink's work about mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And when I have agency, I feel less threatened and less fearful. We know those are the drivers of cortisol and adrenaline and stress. And I just wonder, is that showing up in making people feel happier, is giving them agency? Because I think people sometimes don't have the conversation because they think it's going to make it worse and make people unhappier. And I just wonder what your thoughts are. Does that make them happier? Does that give that sense of being more empowered?
Oh, yeah, sure. Because one of the things in the modern workplace today is we want to know that what we do every day has meaning. Meaning to me, meaning to the organization, and sometimes even meaning to the world at large, if you're looking at being a responsible citizen of the world. So it really does matter. So I want to choose the job that I go to. I want to choose the manager that I report to. I want to choose the work, and that work has to give me meaning and belonging to the organization. If I'm not making an impact, as small as it might be, then I'm not going to be engaged in the work that I do. So definitely, and that's, I think, a very important factor for people and cultural leaders to make sure that you're actually giving the people agency into the work that they do. And that starts from your recruitment. Yeah. So in your screening patterns, you have to evaluate that, whether there's that alignment. Keep checking it in on your onboarding. Check it in the performance appraisals. Are we still aligned, or is there misalignment? And how do we bring it back to the shared understanding and shared value so that we don't have the misalignment on the culture, David?
Wow, Kate, that's fantastic. Mark, I saw you nodding there around. There's something that I think that Kate said there. I saw you nodding about, particularly around that kind of the meaning and that alignment. Mark, what do you think about what Kate was saying there? You're just on mute there, Mark.
Thank you, David. I totally concur with what Kate is saying. Perhaps what we need to re-examine, and like Dr. Jerry Gule said, is having tough conversations with ourselves as HR practitioners and leaders within this space. And what do I mean by these tough conversations? How do we create credibility on the things that we do? And creating credibility here is a question of how are we looking at certain data within the organization and reading the numbers behind that data and informing the C-suite that, look, this is a direction the organization is taking in terms of the culture, and we need to do A, B, C, D. But now, if we are not having those tough conversations and we are going with mere reports to the board, for instance, our credibility is not taken seriously, and that way we'll not be able to drive culture. More importantly also is, what do we do, for instance, like Kate has mentioned, doing the 360, or even doing what I do with organization using the Denison model of organizational culture survey. How do we then translate the reports we are getting from those surveys so that they make meaning to the organization, and to ensure the gaps that we have identified as managers? What do we do in terms of creating solutions so that the organization is totally aligned, the employees are aligned, and the strategy is aligned for purpose of achieving whatever we want to achieve as an organization? So those tough conversations amongst ourselves. So how do we, for instance, become strategic? And I can't wait to read your book, David. What are organizations learning out there in terms of HR being strategic, HR being data-driven, and so on and so forth? That's how I look at it, basically.
Mark, thank you very well. I hope you'll enjoy the book, because I think you will, because I think much of what you're saying, in fact, what we're all saying here today, very much is centered within the book. And what I enjoyed when I was writing the book as well was telling stories of chief people officers, chief execs, and others who really share your passion for people-centered workplaces that create that alignment where we're empowering, enabling others to be able to do their best work, and creating that strategic alignment, but recognizing that they're the drivers of effective, high-performing, productive workplaces. And the old paradigms of blame and punishment and centralized power and autocracy and command and control, and these leadership messages, and we kind of be bombarded with leadership messages, aren't we, from global perspective of organizations, but actually the stories that are coming through here today and also through the book are telling a story of a new model of leadership, a new form of leadership, if you will, which is about putting people first and creating people first workplaces, not because it's nice to do, not because it's a sort of convenient meme on a social media post, Jerry, to your fantastic point earlier, but because that creates high performing organizations where we can thrive. Thank you so much. I'm going to come, Nancy, because one of the aspects of the people and culture operating model is there's people, culture, strategy, and justice. And I want to focus on justice if I can, because as an employment lawyer, I was absolutely inspired by the way that you introduced the concept of justice, and justice not delivered through binary oppositional systems of right, wrong, win, lose, litigations based methods, but you talked about justice in a much wider context. I'd love to explore that with you in more detail, Nancy, about how organizations can embed the kind of justice that you're envisaging, more transformative justice. And Jerry, Kate, and Mark, I'd love to hear your views on this as well, because we know how important justice is. I would say that how I experience justice when things go wrong is the defining feature of my experience of the workplace culture. We can all do culture when the tills are ringing and everyone's slapping each other on the back, and we're skipping around the organisation as if we ever do, and everyone's getting on well. That's easy. That's easy. The true test of culture is when things break and how the organisation delivers justice. So let's go back into that, because it's one of the domains of the model and it's an important one. And I can't miss the opportunity to hear, Nancy, from yourself a bit more and how we can bring what you were saying to life and make it a real practical reality. Nancy, over to you.
Okay. So one of the things I have actually researched over the years is when it comes to culture, justice, it's actually what you give, you get, because it can either damage it or actually build it. And you could come to realize that in these environments, people don't actually resign from their jobs because of salary. No, people actually resign from their job because the job environment is very toxic.
Yeah,
they are being harassed every day. They are being humiliated every day. And I don't know whether you heard about the Convention 190, where Nigeria has actually ratified that convention. And just like last year, we had a judgment from our industrial court here, where a line manager actually harassed the junior worker, insulted the junior worker and saying, "Oh, you can't do anything." And what happened was he had to resign. And you could see that kind of resign is actually called constructive dismissal. The person actually resigned because of the pressure from the office, and he had to go to court, and the court looked at it and said, "No, everyone going to work, the work has to be safe. I have to be happy working here." Most times, what do you do? If you talk about you want to introduce something new, how do you pass the information? How do you communicate the information? How does the line manager make sure that this information is understood? Because you could understand that there might be a new law, and someone who just had like the basic education doesn't understand this law. So you as a line manager, you can't wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, are you dumb? How come you don't understand it?" It's the job of the line manager to make sure that this information are communicated even on the lowest language, making sure that those under you understands this. And one of the things, people just look at it and say, "Oh, nothing happens." And one of the issues HR managers have failed to do is, I think they just forget about the laws. Yeah. And back here in Nigeria, I keep saying the industrial court tries every way to favor the employees. They actually finds very well to actually favor the employee. Somebody can resign from his work because of being harassed and say nothing is happening. And the organization have to understand that there's something called vicarious liability. Yeah. If the line manager is being constantly harassing an employee, and the organization is just letting everything be, not saying anything, they should also understand that if they go to court, the court will not award damages to the line manager. The court will award damages on the organization. That is reputation. That is actually the organization reputation going down. So this issue of training shouldn't be one-sided. They have to be very sure. Who are the line managers? How do they communicate? How do they pass information? How do you manage this information? When you get information about these line managers stating that they're constantly harassing they have colleagues, the junior colleagues. How are this information managed? How does the organization deal with it? Do they just feel like, oh, he's a line manager, he's a line manager, nothing happened, we need him? Forgetting the fact that you need this line manager. If you put advert outside, you will see someone better than him. For how long would you continue protecting someone who is costing the reputation of your company down? This is something we have to take serious. Harassment is going down. People are not even resigning again because of increments. No, because you can find out there are remote jobs. People now do 2 or 3 jobs. Even if my organization is paying me, for example, 300,000, I can actually do like remote jobs. I can actually create content, and the YouTube pays me, and I supplement whatever I'm getting. I can create content, create content, and they pay me. But they're looking at it. I come to work, I'm not happy. I'm being harassed every day. I can't even think. My mental health is at stake. Every day I'm going to the hospital. Oh no. So organizations should not just focus more of making profits. They should also focus on the well-being of those people, helping them make those profits. Are they happy? Are they willing? Because an happy environment, you will get the best out of your employee, I must tell you. Because whatever change you want to introduce, you can introduce a change. People are scared. For instance, I will give the issue of AI. People are afraid that AI is going to take their jobs. People are scared they're going to lose their jobs. As an organization, you want to introduce AI. How do you pass this information to the employees? Are you just going to tell them, oh, AI is coming, we're going to actually, most of you will lose your jobs? No. Forgetting the fact that AI still needs human supervision. So these informations have to be very carefully managed. Like I keep saying, when most of this information is managed, there are less disputes that will go to court. There are less disputes that will go to their mediation center, arbitration center. Because if you have a good grievance procedure system in-house, there is no way this dispute will go out. Yeah. Because it's only when your house is not properly managed, that's when you see this thing goes out.
Nancy, I think it's so powerful. Because I don't think people necessarily truly understand, but I think you're helping us to understand the impact that this has on the individuals, on the relationship, but also more widely than across the culture of the organization. And I wanted to tap into something you said. I'm very interested to hear from other colleagues here as well. I hate grievance procedures. I think grievance procedures in of themselves are they're confrontational, adversarial, very reactive. They're very reductive. They try and reduce really complex interactions into a right, wrong, win, lose, almost put them into boxes. And I'm a big fan of resolution frameworks and putting in resolution approaches whereby we can use objective scoring systems, find out what's really happened, bring people together at an earlier stage, nip issues in the bud, generate the conversations that Jerry was talking about. I just wondered, in terms of your work as a lawyer, but with organizations, what's the relationship between the policy and how are you changing policies so that we change the language of the policy, that changes the mindset of the parties, that then implements a different set of behaviors, because it's the behaviors that shape the culture?
Okay, one of the things I would say that the policies are there, and most of the time when you go through the policies, there's actually nothing wrong with the policy. But the issue with it, the people who are the policy are meant to be for, they don't understand the policy. And I give it to the management. You can't just introduce something new without making sure that people understand it. There's nothing wrong with the policy. That's the truth. Yeah. And in terms of grievance procedure, I tell HR, you can't call yourself an HR person here if those under you cannot come to you and tell you this is the issue I'm having. And organizations should actually understand that if there's a grievance procedure and the people involved say they do not feel comfortable with those actually going to manage their disputes, the proper thing to do is to request yourself, just hands off. They should bring an external person to investigate it. Because even in the law court here, I could go to court and tell the judge, I don't have confidence in you. And what the judge does is to recuse himself and they bring somebody else. So it can actually be this dispute resolution. It's actually the way it's being managed. If it's managed properly, like for instance, now before the disputes start, you make the people understand the system, make them believe in the system. Because if they do not believe in the system, and the only reason why they don't believe the system because they do not understand the system. So both of them have to work together. So if this is actually done properly, adequately, I don't think there's an issue with it.
Got it. That's really, really powerful. So it's not so much the policy itself, it's the system, the way that we work in the system, bringing that to life. And Jay, I'm going to come over to you because I know you've been listening very, very carefully there to the conversation with particularly the points there around the meaning, the dialogue, the connection, the alignment between all of those different elements. Jerry, I just wonder what your thoughts are. And working in the space you do, coaching, how do you help people? What practical things do you do to help people navigate their way through the systems that we're talking about here today?
Yeah, one of the things that we accept in organizations, which is why we have so-called values, is because we understand that we are bringing people from different backgrounds. They are bringing their different personalities into our organization. Then we say, in this organization, this is what we aspire to as an organization in terms of behaviors from everybody, from top management to the, to what you will, the lowest person in the organization. There are set ways of behaving here that we would expect. And what would help us, particularly in an environment where I am, which is, this racially and so forth, we're different. There are many things that inform how we behave. But we say, what will connect all of us here is this. So I always come back to that and say, how do we live these things that we have said? For instance, diversity. We say this organization embraces and drives diversity. How does that show up? What does it mean? We say professionalism. In this organization, this is one of our values. And therefore, what we try to do, and I think Nancy is correct, because we have to agree as an organization, not as a once-off. We have to remind ourselves through town halls or the hotels, as we say in South Africa, from time to time, come together and remind ourselves. Because in the heat of the moment when the work is going on, it's so easy to forget some of the things. The pressure gets too much. But it's really to remember the humanity that we all have, the values that we all subscribe to, and say, we need to help each other. In a management team that I was a part of, we came up with a team contract. And I still use that today, that as a team, we have a contract. And when we have stepped out of that contract, in other words, we are not leaving that contract, we're not going to punish you because we have it, but we will speak. We will say, a simple thing of like a management meeting, where then there's shouting going on. Someone is monitoring that. We make someone responsible. At the end of that meeting, we need to come back before we close the meeting and say, how did things go today in this meeting?
Yeah.
And you hear the voices of the people around the table. Because the one who has shouted, it has to be reminded. As a team, we signed this team contract, but this is how we behave. We were all bad today. We were bad in the following way, and we need to repent. I will use that word. We need to change and behave differently going forward, because otherwise we can't improve. The fact of the matter is we're human. We are prone to stray from what we aspire for, the good that we want to see. But it doesn't mean we are bad just because we have done that. It's just we have strayed, and we need to come back to the path that we have set for ourselves. Until it dawns that we have that in our minds, that, by the way, my purpose is this. Until we realize, sometimes when we start work, all we're thinking about is the paycheck and the power that we have. But actually, let's use that power for good. For the good, not just of ourselves, but for those that are around us. The people agenda, the people and culture agenda is about that. It's for the good of everyone. And that's the role that we have to try and play. And as a coach, I actually find myself at this time reminding people, helping people to come back to their true north. What's your true north? What's your true contribution? Why did you join this organization? And that's a fascinating conversation to have with someone. Even someone, Kate, who is on the verge of resigning, and you say resigning because a line manager maybe is causing them to take that step. But remind them, let's go back. Why did you join in the first? Do you think your mission is done here? How else can you deal with the challenge that you are facing? And as a coach, I salivated on opportunities to see people having the agency, they're able to stand up and in a humane way confront what is difficult. And in the end, that benefits not just them, benefits, call it the perpetrator, and benefits the Lord, the group, because it is possible. I think things go on because we don't challenge them. Instead, we fight. If you challenge, sometimes take people outside of their comfort zone. I did that with a manager who hated me. I knew this guy hates me because it ridiculed me in public. But I said, okay, what actually is the story here? Take him out of the office. Don't have the, set up a polite meeting and say, I would like us to go out for coffee. You know, those of you who believe in the good scriptures, you know, be good, pray for your enemies. That's practically you're doing stuff, practical stuff to show that you are human. The work is work, and it will come to an end. These positions that we have in organization, they will end one day. But you as a human being, you will continue. And is this how you want to live your life? You call people back to themselves. That's what I do. That's what I would do, David, and I enjoy that kind of work.
I love that. Why did you join the organization? Is your work here done? Are we on the path? I love the conversation there, the sort of pro-social behaviors. What are the behaviors we want to see here? But which are the ones that are misaligned? And when we're misaligned, how do we get back on to track? How do we have the conversations to enable us to do that? I'm not hearing anyone being tutted at, Jerry, or I'm not hearing any fingers pointing or blame. I'm just hearing genuine human conversations, because when we connect at that level, and you present that so powerfully, that connection, that human connection at that level, that's then building the strong relationships. The relationships build the climate within the team, and then those climates come together, they aggregate to form the culture of our organizations. And it reminds me of something I've always genuinely believed in, that every decision that we make, every action that we take is a defining feature of the culture of our organization. It's not fixed. We've already established we can change and things can adapt and change. But it reminds me, and hopefully it reminds those of you listening to this amazing conversation here today, that we all have a responsibility and we all have a role to play in creating cultures, and they happen one conversation at a time. And that's what I think is so powerful about this. But it's also so insightful, and also for me so empowering, because sometimes people think about culture as this big thing that's impossible to change, and it's like an oil tanker. It will take weeks or months or years indeed to turn around. And I think what I'm hearing here is we can turn it around, we can change it when we understand what the expectations are, and then we work together to align those and align our behaviors to those expectations. It's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff. We've had a great conversation around policies and processes, procedures. We talked about strategy. We talked about systems. We talked about relationships. Goodness me, we are packing a lot in to today's conversation. Please let us know what you think. If you've got any questions or thoughts, do you agree with what you're hearing? Is there anything that you don't agree with? Have you got questions that you'd like to ask the panel or each other? Or would you say anything that you're doing in your own organization to bring people and culture to life in the way that we're describing here today? What are you doing right now to deliver the people and culture imperative in your organizations? Panelists, what I'm going to do, if I may, is we've done a lot of work here around line management, about policies and processes, and some of that stuff that happens in the real life, the real interactions between the workforce. I want to move up to the boardroom, and I just want to kind of come to yourself, Mark, if I can, because you talked about strategy and alignment of the strategy, and I want to talk a little bit about leadership through the lens of the direction of travel, the vision, the structure, the strategy of our organizations. What role can our leaders play, Mark, in helping to make everything that we're hearing described here today a reality for the felt experience of people? Or do we just, is it one rule for our leaders and another rule for the workforce? Or do we need to create an alignment between the boardroom and the depots and the offices and the wards and the clinics? And how can leaders go about doing that? I just wonder, Mark, what your thoughts were around the importance of leadership in this space. Again, just on the mute there, Mark, I'm keen to so I know we ought to hear what you're
Sorry
saying.
about that. Thank you very much.
We all do it. We are all regular doers of that. So don't worry. No, Mark, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I believe the board then at board level is a question of the board agreeing on what kind of For instance, if we are looking at increasing our revenues to say $1 million or £1 million, we would then ask ourselves, how do we arrive there? We definitely then have to build a strategy that is going to make an organization achieve that particular strategy. However, then the strategy then is driven by the culture. If the culture is wrong, then the strategy is going to be fed for breakfast, like some management gurus say. And more importantly, what has happened, I don't know what Kate will have to share with us in terms of how is HR being perceived at the board level.
Interesting.
If, for instance, HR goes to the board and has those reports which don't make sense in terms of data, in terms of if we do X, we achieve Y. If we don't do Y, we fail on this area. So it's a question of us as human resource specialists and culture specialists going to the board with meaningful data. We don't go to the board with reports. So it's a question of, for instance, if you may allow me, forming a consequence matrix. That look, if the people component is not taken care of in this way, then the consequences are going to X, Y, Z. So there's the aspect of then cascading the strategy and the culture. So it's a living thing, if you may like. It's like having an ISO standard. If you don't live it, it's just a standard. Employees have to live it. How do they live it? It's a question of them aligning the same. So that there's a cascading component where everybody understands their contribution, the direction the organization is taking, and at individual level, how are they contributing to that overall strategy? So it's a question of, at board level, the aspect of cascading is so important, so that then when you come to departmental heads, including HR, everybody understands how their pillar contributes to the corporate whole. In short, that's what I would say. But in terms of leadership then, how do you, for instance, as HR, support the board in terms of what kind of leadership behaviors do you want to be reflected among leaders? Because what usually happens is we preach water and drink wine as leaders. We are not consistent. I mean, and that definitely then erodes trust. And we'll be talking about trust and fairness. I mean, it's been put very elaborate by Dr. Jerry and Dr. Nancy. The aspect of us being fair and being trusted by our employees is so important, so much so that then they buy into what we are selling to them, giving the employees the voice as well, so that we don't just come with a strategy and drop it to them. What have they contributed in terms of what do we intend, how are we going to achieve that strategy if we don't bring the employees on board so that they also read from the same script with us as leadership and the rest of the team within an organization? Thank you.
Wow. Mark, thank you very much. I'm going to throw that straight over, Kate, because I think Mark posed a question there in that point, and making some fantastic points, by the way, Mark. Thank you so much. But Kate, there was a question in there about the relationship with the people and culture function or the HR function, and the important sort of strategic relationship. Okay, I just wondered if you had any thoughts on what Mark said there and kind of how you're seeing the people function or HR elevated in terms of those strategic conversations and any observations or reflections of your own.
Oh, yeah, sure. I think Mark threw that to me because of the current conversations that are happening in Kenya. And we are really fighting to get the seat at the table in the C-suite and not just be the nice to have department. So that's very alive and well here. We are succeeding in some cases, and we are assuming that role that is equally just advisory as well, and not just, coming to ask for better perks and better benefits for the employees. So we are really consciously and intentionally fighting to have that important seat at the table, and the call to action for people and culture. People have been, you really have to understand the business and understand the P&L so that you can equally be appreciated as an important factor. But the other thing that I've also seen is, especially in this strategy aspect of things in organizations, is the creation of centers of excellence and think tanks, where you have multidisciplinary people and then push the ownership, push the championing of whatever strategic alignment is required, and the behaviors that are going to be lived on a day-to-day basis to make sure that the strategy and culture has alignment and it's being realized for the success of the business, David.
Love that. I think that's really, really powerful, and creating that seat at the table and that strategic alignment within the board and the leadership population, that role, the important strategic role that HR, the people function, can play. Because ultimately, I've seen it work, Kate, where I think the most powerful relationship is the chief exec CPO relationship. And actually, from the people function, if we think about everything that we're describing here as data points, interactions, disagreements, innovation, creativity, the spaces for us to come together as human beings. And if the people function is able to harness all of that and feed it up, that's the one thing that the CEO needs whispering in their ear. This is what's happening now. And what I also believe is when we talk about this is what's happening now in our organization, a very genuine strategic insight into the organization, the next and the most powerful conversation that happens is, and I think this is what's going to happen tomorrow. And the competitive advantage that the chief people officer brings is the ability to be predictive of what happens tomorrow. And in our very uncertain, very ambiguous, very difficult, challenged, but world of massive opportunity, when we think about the chief people officer role and the people function more widely, when it becomes predictive, that is the greatest competitive advantage any firm could have. And suddenly, no longer does HR seek to have a seat at the table, Kate. HR is the table. Okay, HR is the space that we all come to drink our water and our wine. People won't know this because there's a private chat between ourselves as part of the conversation there. I've just been watching the conversations there, and that the walk the talk and don't preach water and drink the wine, I can say really resonated, Mark. That alignment, so we could see our leaders really living the values of the organization. If, like our colleagues here, we're chattering away to each other, please do share your thoughts. Is there anything that Kate just said, that Mark's been saying, that Nancy was sharing around the processes, that Jerry's been talking about, that human connection, anything that really resonates with you, please do share it. But back to you, Kate, what do you think? Am I overstating the relative importance and value that the HR function could have? Can we position HR as strategically the most important function in our firms?
I am biased, of course, but you're not overstating it. So it's really, really important. I mean, if you don't have an understanding of what makes your people tick, who are the right people we need to bring on board? How do we hold our people accountable? How do we reward our people who are making us excel? I mean, does it get any more clearer than that, of the importance of a particular function? So you're not overstating it, David. It's so important to have that collaboration, and so that I'm not biased and just after maybe a hefty paycheck, I think it also needs to be collaborative with all other functions so that there is that synergy in moving the organization and business in the same direction, with a shared understanding, with mutual respect and appreciation for what everyone's contributing to the success.
Wow, how exciting. Now, I don't think there's any part of our organizations that we've not just covered in the last hour. Can you believe it? We've been speaking now for a full hour. There's not any part of our business that we've not gone and shone a torch on and looked at. But maybe one part of the organization that we've not thought about so much is the external relationship with our customers and the importance of the people, culture, leadership agenda in terms of driving really good outcomes for our customers. So we're going to come to the end of the session now. But what I'm going to ask my panelists, if I may, I'm going to give you fair warning. I'm going to ask you to think about, we've talked about the sort of emergence of people and culture as a discipline, and those people-centered, values-driven, purpose-based organizations as drivers of the right behaviors, aligned behaviors to drive productivity, create these really powerful human spaces. Nancy, we thought about the policy spaces, we talked about management, Jerry, we talked about the conversations, Kate, we talked about the HR function, Mark, we talked about systemic and strategic alignment in our organizations. In wrapping up, what I'd like to do, if I may, is invite the panelists to talk about one piece of advice that we can give to anyone who's listening to this to this fantastic conversation today. Piece of advice or any action that we can take away and help us think about the impact that this will have on the customers or the consumers of the business. How can we make this come to life so people feel it outside of the walls of the organization, not just from within the walls? That creation, that alignment of employee experience to customer experience. Because that's when we start to see real strategic value delivered to the organization. That's where we start to see any chief financial officer's antenna just went up and they heard me talking about profit. And that's, I think, where we can really anchor the but I don't mean profit at any cost. So where should we start? Would anyone like to start off? I'll invite you. Anyone like to start off and look at that. Any points or advice, Mark, that alignment between EX, employee experience, and CX, customer experience?
Thank you, David. My contribution is, when you look at it from that perspective, I do read a lot of Dave Ulrich's works and books and literature and presentations. He talks about HR from the outside in.
Yes, he does.
That we look at our customer, what are their needs, what are their requirements, what would they want to experience, and then translate that into the customer experience within the organization. So much so that if, for instance, we are in the manufacturing sector, for instance, we are manufacturing certain products, how do we want our customer to feel about us? So that HR then does not just say our customers, our employees within the organization, but our customers also extend to the people out. And then, actually, that's a stakeholder engagement, if you like, stakeholder involvement. So that then we build internal capabilities that can meet the customer's experience. In brief, that's what I can contribute. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for kicking us off as well. Anyone else want to have the thoughts and guidance on this? Jerry, over to you.
Yeah, someone has said that you are not going to have a good customer experience without good employee experience. Customer satisfaction goes hand in hand with your employee experience, because a grumpy employee is not going to start smiling they may when they get in front of the customer, but it's a begrudging smile that they do. They like cursing inside, because my organization is actually not seeing what I'm seeing. So just to Mark's point, I think part of what we want to do as organization and as HR, HR, just quoting the gentleman that Mark has also quoted, Dave Ulrich, he also says there should be no HR activity that is just being done because we are HR. It is done because we are a business, having very clear results of what we want to accomplish. My thing that I say all the time to audiences is this: if you want to know how things are going, yes, we consultants and we want to help you, want to work with you, to be an extra hand. But in fact, the information lies within the organization. Your employees know what is working and what is not working, and they can also help you fix what is wrong, because they work with your tools. They work within the system. They can be a bottleneck, or they can be a conduit for flow in the organization. So ask your employees. If there are problems, have a sit down and say, guys, what's going on? How can we fix this? And they will tell you. They will tell you if you have created a culture where people are free. We talk about psychological safety, where people know that I'm not going to be killed because I've said what needed to be said to fix this. That changes everything. So ask your employees. You'll be able to then help your customers and drive those revenues that you need to drive. We don't just, as HR, we pride ourselves not just doing HR activities for the sake of it. No, we want to do it because it contributes to the bottom line. And when we say that's not going to help the business, we also are expecting our line managers and our senior leaders to listen to that, because a good HR professionals actually is trusted, has credibility, and should have credibility with the senior people in the organization. And when they bring that information and say, the risk with this, these are the risks. These are the people risks that we are bringing to the business. Therefore, the impact is going to be on the customer. You can't de-link and say we're going to take care of our customers. In the meantime, you don't care about your employees, because you cannot drive that. You need your employees to drive your customer satisfaction.
Gosh, wow. Okay, this is powerful. So like a conduit of flow. Now we know flow in sort of Martin Seligman's work, positive psychology. We think about flow as drivers of happiness, and Kate uses a clear segue. Kate, over to yourself. Happiness. the release of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphin, the ability to feel happy, to feel motivated, to feel purposeful. And again, thinking about that sense of mastery, autonomy, and purpose. I think you're taking that to another level, Jerry. You're talking about flow within the system and creating that flow. And I think that also engenders a level of happiness within the system that will impact on our experience as human beings, the human experience of work, but also those people who are engaging with the business, the customer, and other stakeholders, no doubt, who experience that, no longer grumpy and unhappy or feeling that I've just had my ear chewed off by a very unhappy colleague or manager, but I feel very connected to the purpose of the organization and I'm creating flow, not bottleneck. It's such a powerful way of thinking and reminding us that there is a value behind the conversations that we're having. This is not some esoteric or abstract thing. This is a genuine human-centered human approach. And I just wonder, Kate, because that, I don't know if you picked up on the word flow there, but it was a really powerful, very, 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 very powerful way of thinking about the relationship and flow. And I wonder if we could take that into sort of human sense of happiness and human psychology, and as well as the org psychology, and think about how that also plays out in terms of people's experience of the workplace.
Oh yeah, sure. I was so excited about Jerry's input because I want to take it a little bit further, because he's covered the employees and the customers. But how about our suppliers? How about the communities where we operate in? How do they experience us? And is there consistency in terms of how they interact with our business? So I think my parting shot was actually called Beyond the Bottom Line. And beyond the bottom line is the people, and those people are our employees, our customers, our suppliers, and the communities where our businesses and organizations operate. They really have to interact with us and make sure that we have that good citizenship, even with the communities where we operate from. I don't know if that answers your question, David.
Well, no, it doesn't answer it. It exceeds it. Significantly, because you've now taken that into a whole stakeholder analysis and recognizing that the bottom line might be one measure, but you've now got a whole series of additional measures in terms of how people are connecting with the organization as a whole. It was incredible. Thank you so much indeed. And Nancy, you started the conversation, Nancy, really challenging us to think about justice and the role of lawyers and the role of policies and processes. I loved it. I'm so into this space as well around the relationship between people, policy and process. And I just wonder, final words come from yourself today, Nancy, through the work that you're doing as an employment lawyer, but also really challenging and disrupting the way we think about this stuff. What are your thoughts about how do we make this come to life for customers and external stakeholders?
Okay, one of the things I would say is that the HR do not know how heavy the shoes they wear is, because if they understand how heavy it is, they would understand that most HR don't understand their responsibility, and that's why you get to see most of them act with a lot of sentiment. Because if you understand your responsibility, you understand your role, and you understand the shoes and the size of the shoe you wear, a lot of things will not happen. For instance, some HR feels that their role only is for leave forms, issue query, and also pay, like the payroll issues. And another thing I would say is that you cannot call yourself an HR personnel if you're not accessible by those who are under you. You should be accessible by your subordinates. If you're not accessible by your subordinate, you shouldn't call yourself an HR personnel. I think they should just look for another role, because HR is meant to have a big heart. It's meant to be someone everyone is willing to come to. You are meant to be the one to prevent dispute. You are meant to be the one to build culture. The culture we are talking about is HR, because you are meant to, even when the company writes policies, HR. So this, and another thing we would have to understand is that, you're talking about productivity. Their productivity is here. All organizations are there. They're not there for charity. They're there to actually make income. But if there's no healthy and safe environment, how do you have a productive employee? It goes hand in hand. So organizations should they shouldn't just focus a whole lot about making productivity. They should also focus about the employees making this actually making this income for them? Because you cannot say you love your employee and your employees are not happy. So organization, another thing management should look at, management shouldn't just leave everything in the hands of HR and just blank their eyes off. No, HR is also a fellow employee who checkmates HR. HR should be checkmated. Because you find out that if you go to do like an audit, you find out that most of the issues are even coming from the HR itself. If HR is the one causing the issues, how do you actually expect there to be a safe environment? How do you expect there to be a productive environment? So they shouldn't just leave everything in the hands of HR. Yes, HR, you have a big shoes to fill.
Partnership.
With the HR to be sure that HR is actually fulfilling their roles and their responsibility. And while dealing with HR, forget about sentiment. If HR is causing too much trouble, they should be willing to let go. That's it. It's actually very important. If you're willing to let go, if the trouble, because you can't be the one bringing the chaos where you're meant to be the one bringing the peace. If the HR is not doing that, they should let the HR go. That's the truth. Because I just feel most organizations, you see HR, they carry their shoulder up like one mini god. HR, they're not God, and this is what the management is meant to put the HR in their place. Because once you see a structured organization, you could find that a lot of things are not happening. One of it, I've been to an organization and I just looked left, looked right, and I saw the HR department was not structured. And I just said, oh, this organization is not a structured place. And someone asked me, how do you know? I say, HR is the heart of every organization. If the HR department is not structured, forget about everything in this organization. What they are doing is crap. These are things we have to look at.
Nancy, wow. This is what I love about these conversations. They just bring the whole topic to life, and they challenge us as well. They challenge us to think about what it means to be a leader, a people professional, a manager, an employee, a customer. And what I love about what you said, and what I love about the whole conversation has just been so rich and so powerful. But we are all in it together. We need to look out for each other. We need to support each other. We need to break down those functional silos, get people talking, creating that alignment, removing the sort of toxic processes which cause harm, whilst providing safety for people, coming together, having powerful conversations from the boardroom to the basement and every point in between, bringing people with us. Did this conversation set the soles of our feet on fire? It certainly did for me today. I have absolutely loved this conversation. Kate, Mark, Nancy, Jerry, and of course Jonathan at People and Culture Institute HQ, thank you for making this conversation happen. This is really about bringing people and culture imperative to life. We love to hear your thoughts. Did Jonathan mention joining the People and Culture Institute is free of charge? We don't charge a penny to be part of this incredible organization. I think we've got 600-700 members. We want to get that up to 10,000 members, Jonathan. We want to see the membership of the People and Culture Institute growing. Tell your friends, tell your family, let them know about the quality of the conversations that we're having here today. There's a big movement of change happening, and it's happened here today. It's been happening through International People and Culture Week. This is what it's about. Now, there are no simple answers. If there were, we'd all have been doing it many, many years ago. And we heard Mark talking about Dave Ulrich, such a pioneer in the area of people and culture and leadership. And we salute and celebrate his work, as with many other people's work. But there's no simple answer. We have to constantly challenge ourselves, listen to each other, learn from each other, look inwards and look outwards. And those are real challenges. And that's what the People and Culture Institute does. It creates the space to challenge, to learn, to listen, to engage. But today's panel has delivered that and then some. So I'd like to say a massive thank you again to all of the panelists here today. Please do stay in touch. Kate, we'll have you back again, of course, next year, as we will have everyone. You'll become a regular, Kate, on our People and Culture Week activities, as with everyone here on the panel. But Jonathan, I'd just like to say one final vote of thanks to you on behalf of everyone at International People and Culture Week for all of your work making this happen. That doesn't happen by accident, as you know. Jonathan, thank you so much for all of your work and effort. And again, panelists, thank you so much for being part of a fantastic conversation. Thank you.